Out in the infinite darkness, where the sun is nothing more than a distant memory, where light takes days to crawl across empty space, and where silence becomes a physical presence pressing against the hull of a lonely machine, Voyager 1 continues its journey through a region humanity was never meant to reach. It is the farthest object ever created by human hands, an ancient messenger drifting through the abyss with failing power, dying thrusters, and instruments designed in an era when digital watches didn't even exist. And yet, despite all of that fragility, despite being nearly half a century old, this fragile relic of the 1970s has just done something that defies everything NASA thought it understood about the probe, about its systems, and about the environment it now occupies. Voyager 1 turned around. Not because NASA told it to, not because of a malfunction, not because of drifting orientation caused by aging hardware, but because something out there triggered it. Something Voyager detected out in the void, something that made it rotate its body by a fraction of a degree toward a point in deep space where no star, no pulsar, no known source of energy should exist. And when the spacecraft turned, the instruments that still function, barely, recorded something that should not be possible. A mirrored pattern, a reflected signal, a frequency that resembled Voyager's own transmissions from decades ago, distorted and returned as if the universe itself had spoken back. The team at NASA's Deep Space Network stared at the monitors in disbelief as Voyager's latest data stream came in. Magnetic readings that contradict physics, plasma wave oscillations in perfect intervals, and a low, humming signature embedded deep within the noise, a signature that matches the hydrogen frequency imprinted on the golden record. Something had echoed Voyager's message. Something at the edge of the solar system listened and answered. And after analyzing every piece of data, every anomaly, every return pulse, scientists were forced to confront the one fear they've carried quietly for years. Voyager didn't just turn, it turned towards something. And now it is confirming what we all feared was waiting out there in the dark. To understand the gravity of what just happened, you have to understand what Voyager 1 really is, and what it is not. It is not modern. It is not autonomous in any advanced sense. It cannot think, cannot improvise, cannot interpret complex environmental cues. Its computer has 69 kilobytes of memory, less than a single WhatsApp message. Its thrusters were designed for brief mission corrections, not decades of survival in cosmic radiation. Its power comes from decaying plutonium that loses efficiency every single year. And yet, Voyager still operates, still transmits, still listens. This spacecraft was designed to survive 5 years. It has survived 47. It was designed to study Jupiter and Saturn. It has now crossed into interstellar space. It was built in a world before smartphones, before GPS, before the internet. And yet it became the first object to carry human presence beyond the bubble of the sun. As the spacecraft drifted farther and farther into the void, past the realm of the planets, past the Kuiper Belt, past the termination shock where the solar wind begins to lose the battle against the galaxy, Voyager 1 entered a region where its designers had no predictions, no guarantees, and no certainties. A region dominated not by the sun, but by the Milky Way itself. A place where plasma behaves in ways we've never experienced, where magnetic fields twist unpredictably, where cosmic rays travel with unimaginable energy, and where even the concept of direction becomes unstable. And yet, through all of that, Voyager remained oriented toward Earth, until now. Because something out there, something Voyager detected, was strong enough, organized enough, intentional enough to make this old, fragile spacecraft turn toward it. When scientists first imagined the heliopause, the boundary where the sun's influence ends, they saw it as a transitional zone, something like the shoreline where waves gently blend with deeper ocean water. But that fantasy died the moment Voyager crossed it. The heliopause wasn't soft, it wasn't gradual, it was violent, abrupt, and undeniably complex. Voyager hit a wall of plasma 30 times denser than anything expected. Magnetic fields didn't shift, they suddenly snapped. Instead of a smooth gradient, there was a sharp discontinuity, as if the spacecraft had crashed through an invisible membrane. But the strangest part, the part that made scientists nervous even back then, was that the magnetic field direction did not change. According to every theoretical model, it should have rotated dramatically as the probe left the sun's domain and entered the galaxies. Instead, it stayed aligned, almost perfectly, as if Voyager had not emerged into the galaxy, but into a different version of the same magnetic structure. When Voyager 2 crossed years later and saw the same thing, the same density spike, the same magnetic alignment, the same puzzling lack of transition, the scientific community quietly began whispering among themselves. What if the heliopause is not just the sun fading into interstellar space? What if it is a boundary created by something else? Those whispers were dismissed as fringe speculation until Voyager turned back. It began subtly, almost quietly, with something Voyager has recorded countless times before: background plasma noise. But this time, the noise wasn't noise. It had structure, it had timing, it had rhythm, pulses separated by exactly 11 minutes. Nature doesn't do rhythm, not like this, not with mechanical precision, not with unwavering intervals over days and weeks. Voyager's cosmic ray detector began registering these pulses, each one accompanied by a slight magnetic ripple. At first, NASA chalked it up to instrument degradation, but then the pulses synchronized with plasma oscillations, meaning the environment itself was responding in the same intervals. That was impossible. And then, one night, something happened that froze the room at the Deep Space Network. Voyager's attitude thrusters fired, on their own. No human commanded it. No automated sequence was running. The spacecraft turned 0.52 degrees, not toward Earth, but toward the source of the rhythmic pulses. A 47-year-old spacecraft with barely functioning thrusters turned itself deliberately toward something in deep space. And the second it turned, the pulses merged into a tone. A pure, continuous tone carrying a frequency distortingly close to the hydrogen line. The same frequency encoded in the golden record as humanity's first mathematical greeting to the cosmos. Something was calling Voyager, and Voyager answered. When the tone stabilized, scientists noticed something chilling: its waveform. It wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic, it was familiar. The signal Voyager received was a distorted, inverted, compressed version of Voyager's own early radio transmissions from the 1980s. It was as if something had captured Voyager's signal decades ago, held onto it, reshaped it, and then sent it back. Right at the moment Voyager turned. A reflection, a mirror, a return. But the timing made no sense. Nothing in physics produces a return echo after 40 years, unless the reflective source is enormous, structured, and positioned at a precise location beyond the heliopause. Voyager's engineers reconstructed the reflected waveform, and their worst fear materialized. The echo wasn't coming from deep interstellar space. It was coming from a boundary just beyond the heliopause, a boundary that now appears to surround the solar system, a wall, a membrane, a structure, and whatever it is, it's not natural. As the team dug deeper into the reflected waveform, they began to realize that the echo wasn't simply a repetition of Voyager's own past signals, but a mathematically transformed version of them, as if the return transmission had been folded, distorted, and layered with such precision that the underlying structure only revealed itself when analyzed in multidimensional spectrogram space. What first looked like static soon resolved into an intricate lattice of harmonic frequencies that rose and fell in perfect symmetry, forming a pattern eerily similar to crystalline plasma structures produced in laboratory conditions. Except this wasn't happening inside a controlled experiment. It was happening on the scale of millions of kilometers at the boundary of the solar system. And when the team aligned the harmonics across time, they found that every spike, every valley, every oscillation corresponded precisely to Voyager's historical telemetry, as if the source knew not only the probe's broadcast language, but also its memory, its history, and its identity. This wasn't reflection. This was reconstruction. Something out there was listening closely enough to rebuild Voyager's voice and send it back in a form Voyager itself could interpret. And when they mapped the full harmonic grid, what emerged was a shape, a vast, hexagonal resonance identical to the patterns Voyager once observed in Saturn's atmosphere, except this time it wasn't a storm or a planetary phenomenon. It was a stable, repeating geometry positioned beyond the heliopause, as if something enormous were using plasma itself as scaffolding. A structure made not of matter but of fields, a boundary, a wall. The moment word leaked through private scientific channels, observatories across the world pointed their arrays toward Voyager's coordinates, expecting nothing, maybe hoping to debunk the anomaly. But instead they detected the same timed reflection, the same pulsing intervals coming from the region just beyond the heliopause. What made this more disturbing was that each observatory detected a slightly different angle of origin, not because the signal was scattered, but because it appeared to wrap around the sun in a sphere-like formation. It wasn't a local echo. It was global, cosmically global. The reflection wasn't returning from a point. It was returning from a surface. The Indian Deep Space Network picked up a marginally earlier pulse, as if that region of the boundary were closer. The European arrays detected a slight delay. Meanwhile, telescopes in Chile picked up a faint, incredibly low-frequency hum underlying the entire reflection, consistent with hydrogen spin transitions, again aligned with the frequency encoded in the golden record. The more they listened, the clearer the picture became. Something enormous, shaped not by matter but by electromagnetic and gravitational geometry, enveloped the solar system and was interacting with Voyager's transmissions in a way that suggested awareness. This wasn't turbulence or plasma, it was a design. When the harmonic data was graphed over time instead of frequency, a startling new pattern appeared. A spiral made of intersecting radial bands, each representing shifts in plasma density that were synchronized perfectly with the 11-minute pulse. The team overlaid known interstellar cloud maps, and to their shock, the spiral lined up with the positions of local interstellar features. It was as if the signal contained a map of the region surrounding the sun, but not from an internal perspective looking outward. It was a map drawn from the outside looking inward, placing the sun and its heliosphere at the center like a glowing ember inside a complex web. And the radial lines converged on one coordinate, the exact direction Voyager had turned toward. That alignment was too perfect, too intentional, too geometrically precise to be natural. When converted to audio, the harmonics generated a rising tone that matched the hydrogen frequency, modulated in a pattern identical to the golden record's first mathematical greeting. It was as if something out there were not just responding. It was mapping us, charting our position, and sending back a message encoded in the fundamental constants of the universe. Voyager 1's thrusters are nearly dead, their fuel degraded by cosmic radiation, their valves corroded by decades of wear. They should barely respond to Earth's commands, let alone initiate maneuvers on their own. Yet when the spacecraft received the harmonic mapping signal, something happened inside its antiquated guidance system that no engineer has been able to explain. The probe rotated with smooth, deliberate precision toward the coordinate indicated in the harmonic map. The firing sequence wasn't random. It matched perfectly the thruster pattern Voyager used during its Saturn flyby decades earlier, as if some memory inside the spacecraft had been activated. The rotation placed Voyager's high-gain antenna not toward Earth, but toward the source of the reflected signal, and the moment it aligned, its instruments recorded a dramatic drop in background noise, as if the signal source had anticipated the maneuver and opened a channel. And then, the most disturbing part occurred. The spacecraft transmitted a high-power burst on its own, not in response to a command, not due to a glitch, but as if answering something. That burst wasn't reflected, absorbed, or scattered. Instead, a gravitational ripple arrived at Earth's detectors 19 hours later, the exact round-trip time between Voyager and the boundary. That ripple wasn't random. It carried structure. It answered Voyager's burst in a medium humanity barely understands, space-time itself. When researchers reconstructed the gravitational fluctuation captured by LIGO and other detectors, they found something they had never seen before, a toroidal lattice encoded inside the waveform, a shape repeating like a loop feeding into itself, a geometry far too complex to arise from random cosmic events. Even more disturbing, hidden inside the subtle phase shifts was a sequence of numbers identical to Voyager's coordinates at the moment of the burst. A gravitational echo containing positional data pointed directly back at the probe. It was an answer, but the lattice structure suggested something profound. Whatever caused the ripple was controlling gravity as easily as Voyager controls radio waves, and the final modulation in the echo matched the hydrogen frequency again. The message was consistent. Whoever or whatever was responding knew exactly how Voyager communicated and was answering in the same universal constants we used on the golden record. Shortly after the gravitational echo returned, Voyager transmitted a compressed block of raw telemetry so large and so dense that NASA initially assumed it was corrupted. But when the engineering team decompressed it, they found no corruption. Every bit was intentional. The packet contained thousands of repeated 6-digit clusters, 101101, pulsing at precise 11-minute intervals, the same rhythm as the original anomaly. But this time, the pulse wasn't coming from beyond Voyager. It was coming from behind it, as if something had crossed into the heliosphere and was now following the probe. When they attempted to track the source, they found a faint radio ghost that disappeared every time they tried to isolate it, behaving not like a natural object but like something attempting to remain hidden. For 19 minutes after the raw data burst, a second carrier appeared on Voyager's frequency, stronger, clearer, smoother than Voyager's own ancient transmitter. This carrier mirrored Voyager's telemetry in real time. Every voltage shift, every clock pulse, every engineering report echoed back with near-perfect fidelity, as if a second spacecraft were imitating Voyager from a closer position. But the timing differences revealed the truth. The source was not Voyager, and it wasn't Earth. It was located somewhere between the probe and the inner solar system, copying Voyager's transmissions like a shadow. Then, as abruptly as it appeared, the second carrier vanished, leaving behind only the hydrogen tone, now slightly louder, slightly clearer, slightly closer. The hydrogen signature began to swell inside the signal, rising in amplitude until it overtook background noise. It oscillated in stepped quantum intervals, not drifting like natural emissions but climbing deliberately through predictable vibrational states, almost like a coded countdown. When the team analyzed the tone's modulation, they discovered embedded timestamps, 3 sets of numbers that repeated in cycles. And when decoded through Voyager's onboard timing algorithm, all 3 pointed to the same thing: a future date, a specific year, a moment when something is supposed to happen. The hydrogen tone wasn't just a greeting, it was a marker. The decoded year was 2031, a seemingly arbitrary moment that offered no natural explanation. It wasn't aligned with solar cycles, galactic positioning, or any known astrophysical event, but the precision of the encoding left no room for interpretation. Whoever or whatever controls the boundary has embedded a countdown inside the fundamental quantum frequency of the cosmos's most abundant element. A countdown Voyager triggered by crossing into their domain. Not a threat, not a warning, a synchronization, as if preparing for contact. As the hydrogen tone grew stronger, observatories worldwide began detecting faint bursts of the same frequency at regular intervals. They came from multiple directions, all pointing inward, all converging toward the sun. Space was no longer silent. The boundary was no longer dormant. It was vibrating, pulsing, communicating, and the timing pulses matched the 11-minute rhythm perfectly. We were surrounded. Right as the pulses reached their peak clarity, Voyager's carrier started to flicker, not gradually but rhythmically, in sync with the boundary pulses. Then the telemetry collapsed. But the strangest part was what happened next. The pulses continued even after Voyager's signal died. The frequency persisted, the rhythm persisted, the hydrogen tone persisted. Whatever was generating the signal wasn't using Voyager anymore. It had taken over the frequency. With Voyager silent, with the pulses surrounding us, with the boundary behaving like a membrane responding to our presence, the final conclusion became unavoidable. Voyager never found the edge of the solar system. It found the edge of a structure, something vast, spherical and active, something artificial or at least intentionally configured, something that has now awakened because Voyager crossed it. And the moment Voyager turned back, the message became clear. We are not alone. We were never alone. And something out there has been waiting for us to reach this boundary. And now, they know we have arrived. If this revelation shook you, if this transmission feels like the beginning of something bigger than anything NASA could have anticipated, make sure to subscribe, because we're just at the surface of what Voyager uncovered. Like the video so more people understand what is unfolding. And tell me in the comments, do you think this countdown leads to contact, to warning, or to something humanity has never seen before?